Welcome back to the Pistons Jack YouTube channel. On today's episode, we'll talk about how Tobias Harris got inside the head of Paolo Banchero. We'll also talk about some contract updates for some young Pistons and what this means for their future on the team. We'll also preview the Dallas vs Detroit Mexico City game in just a moment. To lead off today's show, I wanted to circle back to Wednesday night's win against the Magic and just dive a little bit deeper into the trash talking, if you want to call that, between Tobias Harris and Paolo Banchero. I think that game itself, Paolo became one of the most hated players by Pistons fans, and hate might be a bit strong, but I can see why a lot of the fan base now has him high on their hit list for players that they always want to see the Pistons beat. And I'm the same. That game, he was frustrating me. But I wanted to focus in on the incident at the free throw line towards the end of the second quarter, because I've dug a little bit deeper and found some pretty interesting and funny stats for what happened from that moment on. So if you haven't seen it, it's going kind of viral. But late in the second quarter, Tobias fouls Paolo, who to that point was playing decently. The Magic and Pistons, it was a close game. And, you know, it was a close competitive game, and Paolo goes to the line, and I can't really repeat a lot of what they said, but basically Paolo's just calling Tobias old, wash, trash, basically saying you can't guard me. And to that point, Paolo had been probably playing a bit better than Tobias, but it was essentially from this moment the game really started to turn, because Paolo, after talking a fair bit of trash, I can't swear on here, goes to the line and he misses both free throws, and both pretty bad. The second one in particular was a straight up brick, and there was only 2 minutes left, but the Pistons, I think, end up taking the lead at the half. Tobias and Paolo both got a double technical in that incident, but in the third quarter, this is where it gets funny. So Tobias ended up scoring 23 for the game and was one of the Pistons' best players, particularly in the most important part of the game, which was the third quarter. And in that third quarter, he went a perfect 4 of 4. He hit a corner three, he had a dunk in transition, and then my favorite bucket of the night was he gathers the ball, he's got Paolo on him in the corner, takes him down to his patented kind of low post area, and does a beautiful post fade about 6 to 8 feet from the rim, swish, nothing but net, straight over Paolo, and he just absolutely tears into Paolo on the way back down the floor. And in that quarter, Tobias scored, like I said, 10 points, 100% field goal, and Paolo went 3 of 9, and some of his shot selection, it wasn't the reason the Magic lost that quarter in particular, but some of his shot selection wasn't great, and Tobias defended him on a few of those possessions, and I thought it was just interesting. I just wanted to go over that and give you some more insight, because Tobias from that moment on ended up kind of taking it and humbling Paolo. Not that Paolo or Magic fans would ever admit that, but Tobias definitely won that battle in the end, and I think next time they play, that'll be definitely something to watch, because the Pistons and Magic overall, it seems to be a real physical game. I saw some people on Twitter saying, I'd love this for a playoff series. I don't want a playoff series with the Magic because I don't trust them not to injure our players, but it's a chippy, fun game whenever the Pistons play the Magic. So that was just funny incident. Let me know your thoughts below. Did you know that Tobias ended up completely cooking Paolo in that third and taking over? I kind of, in the heat of the moment, wasn't fully aware of it, and after looking into it today, I found it quite funny. But the next thing I wanted to talk about before we get to some contract updates was kind of Cade Cunningham. And yes, on yesterday's show, I was reacting straight after the game, and I didn't really have a whole heap of stats in front of me, but we know that was his best game of the season. He had 30 points, 10 assists, 3 blocks, 3 steals, 0 turnovers. It was an incredible performance, but something I'd been monitoring before that game was his scoring and play in the fourth quarter, because for as bad as Cade had looked in some of these first halves and first quarters in particular, I had been noticing that he was playing reasonably well in the fourth quarters. And after yesterday's game, Cade currently has scored the third most points in the NBA in fourth quarters. he is technically fourth, but I've removed Austin Reeves, who's currently second, but he's played a whole other game than the other top five. So I guess you could say Cade's fourth, but I think Austin scored like 2 more points than Cade's 41 in the fourth. So he's fourth in the league. I'm saying he's third for fourth quarter scoring right now in total points. And within those fourth quarters, though, Cade on the season right now is shooting 39% from the field, but he's ticked it up to around 46% field goal in these last quarters, and his 3-point percentage is just under 40%. So he's been efficient in the fourth quarters for the most part. And on top of it all, he's only had 3 turnovers in 4 fourth quarters, which for a guy with his usage is pretty impressive. And the last stat I looked at was his free throw percentage. He's 12 or 14 from the line. So he made clutch free throws against the Rockets. And I think even in that Bulls game, although they lost, he was making some big free throws down the stretch. So, or maybe it was the Celtics game. Either way, I think it's worth just highlighting that whilst his numbers overall still don't look great, even after a great game like last night, he has been coming through in these fourth quarters. Last night he had 10 points in the fourth quarter. I don't think he played a fourth quarter against the Cavs, so that would be why he's at 4 games. But I think he's been solid in the fourth, and I wanted to highlight that because I think that is a key part of his game, to be the closer, to be clutch. But clearly he needs to continue what he found last night against the Magic, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in our preview against Dallas, about what I want to see from Cade. But I think it's a positive that he's showing he can be a closer and come through in these moments, even if he's starting these games a bit slow. But the next item I wanted to quickly hit on was something that wasn't announced, and I want to credit Pistons Powered for doing an article on this. The link will be in the description, but they wrote an article about how the Pistons have picked up, or they call it exercise, team options on Ron Holland, Ausar Thompson, and Marcus Sasser. So Ron, I think that'll be for his 3rd year, but the main player I wanted to focus here on was Marcus Sasser. Now it's interesting, no surprises that they're exercising options on Ron and Ausar. They're long-term pieces, and that's just picking up these options as part of doing business. But for Sasser, what this now means is that his 4th year, they've picked it up so that this will be for next year. So for this off season upcoming from July 1st onwards, this is when this deal will kick in. He jumps from 2.8 million to 5.6 million. Now, what this means is that the Pistons either see Sass here long term, and they want to continue to develop him, and they see a real role for him. Like, it's a shame he's injured right now and has been injured, because there would be there is a serious need for his skill set right now. I've always loved Sass. He was a guy I really liked the draft pick at the time. I might not have agreed with trading a first to get him, or trading a future pick to get him, but I love Sasser in that draft, so I've always been a big fan of his game. But what this means is the organization has a commitment to him. Important to remember that Troy Weaver drafted him, not Trajan. So typically new GMs, new front officers come in and want to select their own guys and show faith to them. But Trajan to this point has shown faith in all of the young rookie players on the roster. So there is extensions pending for Ivy and Duran, but clearly he hasn't moved on from them, and it doesn't sound like they've really been in many trade rumors. So it's interesting. This could just mean, though, they've picked it up so they can use, because 5.6 million with the way the cap's structured now is actually quite a handy contract to add to aggregate salaries and make a move. I know when I was just even looking at trades, this is the offseason just gone, but when the Kevin Durant stuff was going on and I was looking at trades, like, the Pistons kind of only have, outside of like Cade, who's right at the top, they only really have Tobias and Stu's deals in that like middle range. And even Tobias is like 24, Stu's 15, 16. They don't really, like, I guess they have Duncan and Karras now, but it's good, I guess, to have that like $5 to $6 million salary, that just to get you to help match salaries, because a lot of these teams over the tax now can't take back more money, just with the way the cap's structured. So that could be all it is. They just want to have that salary, but I think there is an investment in Sass. I think they like his skill set, they like his ball handling, and they believe in him as a shooter, and he can play it off alongside Cade and Ivy. So hopefully he can get healthy. That kind of brings me to the final part of the show in previewing the Pistons Mavs game on Saturday. I think it must be a 10 p.m. tip off, I want to say. For me, it's 1 p.m. in the afternoon, so don't have to stay up late. But the first thing I wanted to look at was just the injury report. So Sasser is listed as a game time decision. I believe he was a game time decision in the Magic game, so we'll see. I'd love to see him back. And it was good to have Karis LeVert back last game, even if his minutes were a little bit up and down. But the more ball handlers this team can get back is going to be huge. So hopefully Sasser's good to go. I'm not holding my breath though. And then for the Mavs, they have Lively, AD, Gafford, and Dante Exum all listed as game time decisions. I saw AD had some sort of Achilles soreness and exited their last game, so he could be an out. I haven't fully looked into any of like Mavs reporting on that, but that's all. That's their whole big man rotation is game time decisions. So I'm assuming 2 of those 3 will play at least. But if not, they still have Dwight Powell. Which I don't even know why I'm bringing him up, but he's just the name that comes to mind when I think of the Mavs. But I think some of the numbers I want to look at for both the Pistons and Mavs is both of these 2 teams are in the bottom 10 for first quarter scoring, and they're both in the bottom 5 for 3-point makes. So they're also teams that are built on like size and some athleticism. The Mavs are more like brute, true like 6'10", 6'11" guys, whereas the Pistons are more high-flying wings with your Stu and JD. But both teams are like want to play physical. They're athletic and have size in their own ways. And it's going to be an interesting game. There's probably going to be a lot of missed threes. But I do expect the Pistons to get a win here. And what I want to see, we alluded to Cade in the fourth quarter as being more efficient, but something I really enjoyed in that Mavs game was his jumper still wasn't really falling. I think he made 2 jump shots out of maybe 11 field goal makes. A lot of it was high floaters off the glass, just getting into the paint, mid post, posting up, backing down his man, or with like a half spin. Like, I really liked how he just attacked the paint. From like after the first quarter, I thought he set it a little bit for jumpers and wasn't as aggressive. He just started getting into the paint, and he didn't get the free throws, and we know he's looking a bit beaten up, but I want to just see him, if the jumper's not falling early, just get into the paint, like, and yes, we want to see you at the free throw line, but if the refs aren't giving that to you, just don't let that deter you, because when he's getting downhill with his size and strength and he's able to post players up, like, that's where he's at his best, I believe. Obviously, we want him hitting the pull-up 3, and hopefully the jumper can round back into form and look how it did in the preseason because he wasn't missing. But I just want to see him keep getting downhill in his own way, whether that's through post-ups, through pick and rolls. But it did feel like they went away from the Cade and JD pick and roll a little bit against the Magic, and it was just more Cade getting downhill and doing his thing in the post. But I want to see him in around that painted area early and often. And then the last thing is just the starting 5. Whilst they did have a great second half, they were still pretty bad to start that Magic game. In fact, they were bad. The Pistons were down early, the Magic were hitting threes, and the Pistons on the other end weren't scoring. And I think for me I think in that second half they showed they can work, and they showed they can work against the Rockets. That half and the Rockets game overall was like where I thought the starting lineup's been solid, and I've spoken about it numerous times, but it's been when Duncan Robinson's hitting threes. It's more than that, but I think if they have a slow start, I just want to see Ron Holland in early. Get him in the first 3 minutes. Don't wait until even the 7-minute mark. Like, if the Pistons start down 8-2 and there's 9 minutes 40 on the clock, I would get Ron Holland up off the bench, because Ron comes in, brings the energy, and yes, you're going to lack spacing because I'd be putting him in for Duncan if Duncan's the one that hasn't hit a couple of threes. But I just think what Ron brings, his energy, it just mucks things up and it gets his team out in transition. And I think the numbers are showing him, Cade, and Ausar can play pretty well together. Now, a lot of the time it's with Stu at the 5, but I'd be willing just to see what it looks like. And if it doesn't work, then just take him back out, mix it up again, get Duncan back in, get Karras in. But I just don't want to see this team dig itself a double-digit deficit. I'm not a coach. Those are just my thoughts. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the starting lineup and these starts. What would you do to fix it? What do you think the issues are? Really excited for the Mavs games, but appreciate you watching as always. But until next time, go Pistons.